Hello and welcome to Adda with Kalyan. It's the Make in India week in Mumbai, and this is really the time for Indian food because there's been this huge revival and interest in Indian food with a lot of modern restaurants like Masala Library, Farzi Cafe, Soda Bottle Opener Wala, Bombay Canteen, Villa Vandre. They're doing a lot of interesting food when it comes to Indian food right now. But what got me thinking was that when it comes to the dining audience, especially the youth, for whom Indian food is sexy once again, is it more about a certain freshness when it comes to Indian food, or are they also interested in the regional part of it or the history of it? And that's something which I was thinking of a couple of weeks back when it was the Republic Day. And Republic Day is all about federalism, and we have such diversity in regional food. But is it only something which, say, food bloggers or food enthusiasts are interested in, or is the younger hipster audience looking at that as well? So we've got a panel here to discuss that from the industry side, and then we'll get a take from the point of view of customers as well towards the end. So we've got an interesting panel. We've got food writers, we've got food consultants, we've got restaurant owners who are chefs, and we've got restaurant marketing folks and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to get their perspective on how it works. So let me introduce the panel to you. First of all, people in Mumbai. We've got Rushina Muncho-Gildial with us. She's a food writer, she runs a cooking studio. She does a lot of interesting work in regional Indian food, and now she's going to Australia to explore the food over there. We've got Zamir Khan, who's the marketing head of Massive Restaurants. Massive Restaurants really brought in a lot of excitement to the Indian food scene with first Masala Library and Farzi Cafe, which the youngsters don't seem to be getting enough of. And then we've got Chef Aloysius with us, very popularly known as Chef Alu in Bandra, and he's a Bandra boy who's then gone across the world, and now he's opened a restaurant called Villa Vandre, where he brings in a lot of his chefing and catering experience across the world and brings in a lot of international food, but also food he's grown up on. So we're going to see how that's working. Joining us from Delhi is Saurij Bhattacharya, a very seasoned and experienced food writer, and he's been tracking the restaurant business for a long time. In fact, he's even now set up a blog dedicated to the restaurant business. So it'll be interesting to see from his perspective how things are changing. We also have Mohit with us from Gurgaon, who is the brand head of Soda Bottle Opener Wala, which is again one of the very exciting Indian restaurants. But he also writes a blog called Chowder Singh and runs a very popular Facebook page, which is again dedicated a lot to regional Indian food and street food and things like that. So he'll bring in an interesting perspective. Now, before I start the discussion, a few days back I was at the Bombay Canteen, where they're running this sort of regional food event where they've got recipes from their moms. So I got hold of the chef there, Thomas Zakaria, and I asked him that what works in Bombay Canteen. Is it regional recipes, or is it Indian food presented in a fresh way? So let's hear what Thomas has to say. So Thomas, when people come here, are they looking for regional food or regional cuisines, or what are people looking for in the menu?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think a lot of people come here because they feel comfortable here, because they know that they'll get delicious food.
But are they looking at which region of India the food comes from?
Not particularly. We try and get food from all over the country, so it's a healthy mix of various regions and also a lot of seasonal ingredients. But yeah, at the end of the day, what the customers want is just good tasting food.
So the customer is not seeing whether the food is from Kathiawar or Coorg or Bengal or...
No, there'll be a small percentage. That's definitely changing and steering in the direction of wanting regional food.
But there's an interest more in the end product and the ingredients.
Yeah, definitely.
So what Thomas is saying is that what people are looking for is the end product and the end dish. They are not spending that much time thinking about which part of India is coming from, but there is a growing population of people looking for that. So Zamir, taking off from what Thomas was saying, because since you see the business part of what's happening in the restaurants, and I'm really interested, in fact, more in Farzi cafes, and you've opened now the second one at Connaught, and it's coming to Mumbai soon, and then Dubai. More than Masala Library, because Farzi cafe is more the youth hangout. So, and I've seen how packed your restaurants are in Gurgaon. When people go there to eat, are they sort of looking for the history of the food which they're ordering or where it's coming from and stuff like that? Because you do have things like, I remember the vada pav or the Bengali masir jhol and stuff like that. So is that what excites them, or is it the food and the way it's presented? And
see, the basis of coming up with a concept like Farzi Cafe was basically to make Indian food cool again for the younger generation, you know, because every time we kind of realized with Masala Library also that every time the youth wanted to dine out, Indian food was always at the bottom of the pyramid for them. They would never even think of going because of certain preconceived notions and perceptions that that it carried, that it's boring, it's very heavy, there are only the butter chickens and the dal makhnis of the world that you have.
You go with your uncles and aunts
and largely do a family dining, which is a very boring concept. So that was basically where the concept of Farzi Cafe came about. So over a period of time that Farzi has been there, we've kind of managed to change that perception to a large extent, where a lot of people who dine at Farzi Cafe come for the freshness of it. You know, a lot of people I have personally heard talking, oh, ऐसे भी होता है, ऐसे भी कर सकते हैं. You know, they are not even sure as to something as simple as a galati kebab, which generally over decades.
You guys do a burger, right?
We do a burger with it.
Burger, which
exactly.
is very nice.
We do a burger.
And doing a galati kebab with a burger just makes so much common sense.
So those were the things that we kind of innovated with Farzi Cafe.
And which is not just about foam and fizz and spherical, it's like good solid food.
Exactly. And elements of molecular are there in the cuisine, but they're there to add to
no,
what
and I know friends, like I have a friend called Khushbu who works with me. She is representative of the younger crowd and she likes that jazz. So it's not
Correct.
that but my thing is that are people also interested in the origins of where the food is coming from? The younger food.
Yes and no. Yes and no. Those who are real-time food lovers, I won't really use the word foodies, but those who are real-time food lovers who live to eat, they are. Those people who just want to have a nice cool time and just catching up with friends, they couldn't care. So I think there's a fine balance between the two.
So Rushina, in your Perfect Bite studio, you do a lot of interesting regional food workshops where you get people from that community and they talk about the history of the food, and you've done Parsi, you've done Iranian, you've done recently Kurgi, Maharashtrian, you had in fact different parts of Maharashtra. Is it the food lovers which Zamir is talking of who come there, or do you also see younger folks?
No, it's food lovers, it's older people, it's not younger people. But
and you've done quite a few of them.
Yeah, we actually finished 1 year of culinary legacy
and
this
they're
month.
not too expensive. So it's
no,
both Farzi and it's
so
not
in fact,
like expensive at your place to attend
the
it.
whole culinary legacy series we've put. I have done that more to document and keep these cuisines alive in our radar. So we don't actually, the studio doesn't make a profit on them. We just create a space where people can interact with people, home chefs or anyone who's an expert in a specific cuisine. So most of the people we've featured have been proponents of those cuisines, because I think also regional food is something that is very much the premise of the home kitchen.
And in fact, you were saying about this trend study which you've done recently, and even I've seen that trend, that if last year was really all about Indian food becoming sexy again, I think 2016 is going to be more about regional food.
Yes.
So tell me, if you were to put both your marketer's hat as well as food writers, consultants hat, and you consult with brands as well, what can be done the way Farzi did or Bombay Canteen did to make Indian food cool among the youth again? What can be done to make regional Indian food cool now?
So I think that the Farzi Cafe is like the step one in the discovery journey, because what you're doing is you're taking Indian food, you're funking it up for the hipster crowd. That is going to wake them up to the possibilities, and then perhaps then they'll buy into a lot of a fusion of regional Indian, modern Indian.
Actually, I've seen that in other categories in my market research career, like even say financial services. Like often like people go with big banks like the ICICIs and all of that, state banks first, but for the second or third thing then they go in for the more specific Fidelities or the Kotaks and stuff like that. So probably a bit of
I think most cuisines that have been successful across the board, and I think you will corroborate this, have always come in from that restaurant format. and then trickled in. So whether it was a 5-star introducing Chinese food,
and then people
and then it comes and or a wasabi opening at the Taj, and now today the kirana wala carries sushi ready made for you.
Yeah, and veg sushi.
It trickles down, and I think this is what is exciting at the moment. Is every level we are discovering things. So whether it's at the restaurant front where we are reigniting a passion for regional foods. Also,
but I think that's an interesting thing, that get people to feel Indian food is cool and then get them to level 2.
Yeah. And it always works like that. Something catches the attention and then they get hooked and explore more. And I think that's what's happening. I think we're also realizing that there is more food than the food we've grown up eating. Like I grew up eating Gujarati food.
But talking of the food we've grown up eating, I can't call you Alu, but I just know you as Alu. And you know, so Alu, you've been doing the food you've grown up with in Villa Vandre, as well as world food, because you've traveled across the world. Bandra, many call it hipster suburb, and I've seen your crowd over there. What works? Is it the world cuisine which is working better, or your East Indian? Because East Indian food is not even Punjabi food; it's very niche.
No. East Indian food is basically from a community that I come from.
But it's a very small community.
Very small community. Apart from that, I do all the things that we grew up. So 30 years ago, Bandra had just like had a few Parsi people. It had the Kohlis and the East Indians. It's a very small community of people. So in Villa Vandre, what I experienced was, I wanted to introduce people. The whole restaurant is based on what I like to eat. So it could be my travels around the world, and which was a big part was my childhood experiences.
So are people taking to those childhood dishes?
In fact, those are one of the highest selling dishes that I'm doing, and I'm slowly, expanding the number of dishes on that whole.
So which are
segment.
the sort of dishes which too many people don't know of, but you've brought in and is working well?
So, for example, like my grandma's choufla morne, then the salli boti that we do, then the East Indian mutton kuddi, the East Indian mutton kuddi, the prawn curry, which is stone ground, where the masala is still stone ground with the bendi and the bimli.
What is bimli?
Bimli is like if you've seen star fruit, it's a very local thing like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a sour fruit, so it gives the sourness to it. Then we did certain runs of the East Indian sausage, which is doing really well.
That's delicious.
Yeah, and I'm still making it the old way, which is still made in the natural gut and smoked.
In fact, Zamir spent his Valentine's with his wife at Villa Vandre. So it's encouraging to see that people in a place like Bandra are picking.
And people are people are enjoying when you tell them the history behind the dish. That's making a big difference, or the way it's made, or the effort that goes into it. It like paints a story for the dish itself.
So talking of history, I'm going to move to Mohit in Delhi, who's the brand head of Soda Bottle Opener Wala. Mohit, Soda Bottle Opener Wala in a way speaks of history, because it speaks of the history of the Parsis and the history of Mumbai. You've been running restaurants in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, Gurgaon, and now you've come to Mumbai. Do you think that this history is something which appeals to your diners, or are they just going and eating the food and leaving, and they're really focusing on the eating experience, or does the history work?
I think increasingly, we've always taken a stance that whatever we do should always be authentic, be it the Parsi angle to the food, or the Parsi dishes that we do, or the Bombay dishes that we do. I think increasingly that's what I'm seeing with other restaurateurs also, that the focus is more on authenticity. When someone is trying to do kurgi pandi curry, then the effort they're making might not be 100%, but they're getting in, working with housewives, bringing it as close to as possible as to the original. I think a lot of restaurateurs are now focusing on that, and that's a very positive sign. I see Bombay Canteen and Chef Zach. I think he got his mom and working with her recipes. That's what the team is doing. So these are very positive steps. We do a lot of that also. We work with a lot of Parsi housewives. We do a lot of recce on the Bombay streets. We're doing a Valentine's special week at all the Soda Bottle Nawalas, and where we try to recreate what we call the Bombay style biryani, which is what you get, let's say, at Noor Mohammadi, and the chicken Sanju Baba, what again at Noor Mohammadi, stuff like that. Plus a bit of creativity, created a soup there, which it's like a vegetable broth, like the Scotch broth of what the British left us as a legacy. We're putting a bit of barley in it, so stuff like that. But all concepts have to work within the scheme of things that they are in. I mean, we are a rustic sort of place with our food, so we can't go very fine. Same way, like Fuzzy Cafe is not a very rustic kind of place. It is, there is a bit, it's a very swank place. Bombay Canteen is a swank place. So, within the parameters of our concepts and who we are, I think everyone's doing a great job on what they're trying to do. But yeah, I think increasingly there is focus on authenticity. There is focus on regionality. Some of my favorite restaurants, and that's what I think the future will be, are the more regional ones. And I think that's how freshness is coming into and will come into the modern Indian space, because the butter chickens have been done to death and are being done to death in different formats. Now, how many times can you change it around in a malai tikka or a butter chicken? At some point, it will have to get into a Naga pork or dough jam or a Manipuri style chicken liver pate, stuff like that. I mean, that's how the freshness is coming in.
Mohit,
and will further
Mohit,
come in.
if you can hear me, then you made a very interesting point. So you were saying that the future of Indian food as a restaurateur seems to be regional Indian food. So do you think that the youth is slowly getting interested in this? Are you seeing this as a restaurateur?
Yeah. Definitely. See, right now, Indian food is in a very exciting transition phase, where a lot of chefs are dabbling with Western techniques, be it Italian techniques, creating like a keema fettuccine I've seen in some restaurant, or a pasta or a risotto, or even the use of molecular based, like cooking in nitrogen or using nitrogen as a cooking medium. So a lot of chefs are experimenting with that. There's nothing right or wrong. I think everyone has his or her own way of seeing it, his or her own experiences on how they see food and how they've learned food. As long as, if you're calling it your dish or your mother's dish, and you can do what you want. But the moment you call it a chicken 65,
it has to be.
Then it has to be like a chicken 65. You can do it like in the Buhari style of Chennai, or you can do it in the Andhra style. But it needs to be some style, right? I mean, you can't make a chicken 65 that's green in color.
Great. Mohit,
then don't call it chicken 65.
Mohit, so I'm just going to shift to Suresh now, who's also in Delhi, because I got the point of view of Zamir, Alu and you, who's talking of it from the restaurateur's point of view. Suresh, you have been tracking the restaurant business, and even your blog is now called Restaurant Spy. So what are you seeing? Is it Indian food which has become cool, or is the youngster also interested in regional Indian food and getting to know more about the traditions of Indian food? So I think, I think we've lost the thing, so we'll get back to him. But there's a point which I'm saying, that what Mohit was saying was that in a way now people are experimenting and restaurateurs are pushing it and stuff like that. But who's responding to it? Like Alu, for example, in your restaurant, what is the sort of like for example, Shanky goes.
A point which I feel which is very important. In the old days, when you say regional food, we didn't have so many grocery stores and things like that. We ate what grew. So I believe the essence of eating that food is like we eat a lot of saltfish during the monsoon season, because we should not get fresh fish.
In Calcutta, we would have cauliflower in winter and the fulgopi shingara,
So even the menu in the I believe should change depending on the season. So you incorporate those items. You don't need to run apples throughout the year. Run it during the season. Run mangoes during the season. Run saltfish during the season when you're doing saltfish.
But do you think people are interested in that, the younger crowd, or do they want to have kiwi lamb and or New Zealand kiwi fruits? I mean, are people interested in regional Indian?
I've got first-hand proof in the restaurant that now the classics and the regional food that I'm doing is doing much better than the international style food, because I think so the city has had a overdose of your steaks and your lasagnas and your Italian food. They're looking for something, and it feels like home with the spices and things like that. That's my take on it.
Okay, great. So let's see what Suresh is saying. So Suresh, I'm coming to you as someone. You're someone who's been watching the restaurant industry for a while, and you've in fact now set up your own blog also called the Restaurant Spy, which is focusing on that. what is the shift you're seeing in the Indian restaurant customer over the years? Because 2015 we've seen an interest in Indian food, but are youngsters interested in Indian food in a fresh way, or are they also interested in knowing about the history, the regional diversity and stuff like that?
I'm seeing a great resurgence in Indian food, and it is quite evident from what I call the metro station at Chandni Chowk. On Sundays, you can barely find a foothold there because it's crowded with young people from the university. And they're all going to these places like Parathe Wali Gali and all to have the authentic Delhi cuisine. So there is clearly an interest, and you see the number of Facebook groups that have come up around Indian food, the number of the amount of chatter that is taking place on Indian food on Twitter, on all social media options. So I think there is not only an interest, there's also an interest in eating, but there's also an interest in knowing more about Indian food. And I think because of the success of reputed brands like Farzi Cafe and Soda Bottle Opener Wala or Masala Library and Indian Accent, there is increasingly a sense of pride in Indian cuisine. I think that is being reflected on the streets in the number of people who show up at these very traditional Indian restaurants. Like for instance, I've been following a post for the last 3-4 days on Sitaram Divanchand, one of Delhi's premier Chole Bhature Wala. And the amount of discussion that is taking place on him is amazing. So obviously people in the 20s and early 30s are rediscovering the wealth of Indian cuisine.
That's an interesting point, Saurish, because sometimes when we are talking about Indian food and restaurants, we tend to think about the Farzi cafes and masala libraries and the socials and so on. But I think you raised a very interesting point that people are also going to the Chandni Chowks or the forts in Mumbai or the Tireti bazaars for the Chinese breakfast in Calcutta, and they're trying to explore a lot of that. Like I see Rushina, come winter, Gujaratis of all ages go just berserk on pork and undiyu.
But it's not just Gujaratis now. What's interesting is it's all other communities also wanting to discover. And I think that's the exciting part, because
you have kids. Are they interested in regional Indian food? I mean, of course, their mom's not like an average.
They are. Natasha's very fussy, as you know, about her food in general. Currently, they're both tripping on Mama's pasta. So, but when we go to Dehradun and we go every summer, Aman goes to spend time with his grandmother. They are cluing into that food. Okay. So, but it's like we've grown up with that food. We just went to Nasik over the weekend and we found a very nice little place to eat lunch at called I forget the name.
So
but
it's more Maharashtrian
very
food.
very nice local food. And Aman chose to eat the thali, which for me was a big deal. And Natasha actually ate fried fish, which
so it's
she
good to see.
doesn't.
Like so what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a question at the end, and I'd like all of you to pitch in, and maybe starting off with Saurish and Mohit, since you guys are this thing, that what can be done to make regional Indian food more interesting to the youngsters? What can sort of get them to drive them to Chandni Chowks? And Saurish, do you have a point of view in terms of how can regional Indian food be?
A lot of it depends on our effort. If we keep writing about Indian food or talking about Indian food, it is bound to percolate down to the new generation. They are bound to get interested. At the same time, the new generation itself is discovering Indian food in its most authentic settings. I remember when we were growing up, people like Jigs Kalra and all were setting the agenda. But somewhere in the middle, in the 90s and early 2000s, Western food suddenly became very fashionable, and everyone was talking about eating in London and Tokyo and all such places. Now it's so nice to see that people are talking about eating in Nashik. In fact, I know what Rushina is talking about because I passed by that restaurant twice on my way to Sula Fest, and I was very tempted to stop there and eat, but there were other things on my agenda. But we have to convey the excitement, our excitement, to all our readers, and in as interesting ways as we can. And that I think is the way forward.
I think if To sum up, I think Saurish has raised a very good point, and I think it's all coming together when it comes to Indian food. So on the one point, we've got like restaurateurs like Zamir and Zoravar and Chef Alu and Mohit and all of them who are like making Indian food exciting again through their restaurants, and they're sort of betting big bucks. They're putting their money where their mouth lies. And because for them it's investment, but they're sort of going against the grain and doing it. And at the same time, I think Saurish has put in a big thing, which the role of media, like whether it's like the print media or the mass media, which folks like Saurish have represented over the years, or what bloggers are doing now, Rushina, folks like you and me, and also like the Facebook groups and Twitter and all of that. So I think this buzz about Indian food is really interesting. In fact, you guys must catch the latest video which I put up on my channel, The Finely Chopped, where what I did was I went to Fort, which is my favorite place to eat in Mumbai, and just sort of recreated my Fort walk, all the regional restaurants which have been set up by people who'd come from across India. So you can catch that if you go to The Finely Chopped on YouTube. And what I'm going to leave you at the end is, we've been talking from the industry's point of view, the media's point of view, but what about the point of view of diners? So what we went to Soda Bottle Opener Wala in BKC in Bandra in Mumbai, and we spoke to people over there who are interested in Indian food about their interest in Indian food and their awareness in regional Indian foods. So come and see what happened, and we'll catch you soon on Adda with Kalyan.
Yes, I try so many Indian foods.
I love all of it. It's delicious.
Oh yes, I have. In fact, my daughter even cooks it.
You only eat outside food?
I do, a lot.
All the time. We enjoy eating out.
Yeah, more of a Punjabi.
Kali beef? No.
It is something that I have heard since I was a child, but I've never eaten it nor I have seen it.
Actually, basically, I am the Maharashtrian, so there's a Maharashtrian dish called thali pit. That's made out of we call actually the vegetable rotis.
Yeah, I've actually heard of it, and I've also eaten it at a couple of restaurants.
I have no idea.
Litti choka, I heard about that, but I don't know much. If I'm not wrong, it's a Sindhi dish.
I have no idea.
No.
Yes, it's kind of a dosa from Andhra Pradesh. I think it's somewhere in India, like south.